The quiet emptiness of later life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever woken up one morning, the world outside still silent, and felt a strange emptiness settle inside you? Maybe you can't quite put your finger on it, almost like a piece of yourself, once so vibrant, has faded away little by little, quietly, as the years passed. It's a feeling many people rarely talk about, yet it lives inside so many of us, especially as we grow older. You look back at the long road you've traveled. Decades of your life have been poured out for others, your family, your work, your friends, even your community. You've worn so many hats: the caretaker, the provider, the one who held things together when no one else could. So much love, so much sacrifice, so much of yourself given away, sometimes without even stopping to ask, is there anything left for me? And as the seasons shift, children growing up, friends moving away, life's busyness slowly thinning into quiet, you might find yourself standing in your kitchen, looking out the window and wondering, after all I've given, what remains for me? It's a question that echoes in the hearts of many, though we rarely say it out loud. There's almost a kind of shame to admitting that emptiness, isn't there? After all, weren't we taught that giving is noble? That putting others before ourselves is the highest form of love? We watched our parents, our grandparents do the same, sacrificing for the next generation, carrying burdens in silence, measuring their worth by how much they gave away. But here's a gentle truth we often overlook. Life is fleeting. Like the morning mist rising from a river, shimmering in the soft dawn, only to vanish as soon as the sun touches it. No matter how much we give, time moves forward, quiet, relentless. And sometimes, as the years slip by, we wake up and realize we've given away every last drop of our energy, our joy, our dreams, hoping that somehow it would all come back to us one day. But has it? Let's pause here for a moment. When was the last time you checked in with yourself? Not just your schedule or your responsibilities, but your inner world. When did you last sit in the early light of morning before the world made its demands and simply asked yourself, how am I, really? Maybe you remember a time when your days felt fuller, when you were busy building a home, nurturing your children, striving at your career, or caring for aging parents. You might recall the warmth of togetherness, the noise of laughter around the dinner table, the gentle exhaustion at the end of a well-spent day. But now, as the house grows quieter, the phone rings less often, you may start to feel invisible, like your presence no longer matters as much as it once did. This isn't just your story. It's the story of so many who have spent a lifetime putting others first. It's the quiet ache that comes when you realize how much of yourself you've handed over, piece by piece, to people and causes you love, and how little you've kept just for you. And if you feel this way, I want you to know you are not alone. Our culture tells us to keep giving, to keep sacrificing, to wear our exhaustion as a badge of honor. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us, everything changes. Just as the mist dissolves in sunlight, our roles, our responsibilities, even our relationships shift with the turning of time. If we're not careful, we risk losing ourselves in the process, forgetting that we too deserve care and compassion, not just from others, but from our own hearts. So I invite you to breathe deeply and consider, what would it mean right now to turn a little of that love back toward yourself? To honor the years you've spent carrying others, not with regret, but with gratitude for all you've done, and with a quiet promise that your own needs matter too. As we begin this journey together, let's gently explore what it means to reclaim a sense of wholeness, not by turning our backs on others, but by finally including ourselves in the circle of our own compassion. Because after all you've given, you deserve to feel full again. And this moment is the perfect place to begin. The illusion of reciprocity and the lesson of impermanence. Let me share a gentle observation, a truth that many of us carry quietly in our hearts, but seldom speak out loud. At some point in life, especially as we grow older, we realize that the love and sacrifices we've given to others don't always return in the ways we hoped. Maybe you remember those early years when you poured your heart into your family, your relationships, your work. You gave your time, your energy, your affection, trusting that somehow this devotion would create an invisible thread, a bond that would never break. There's a deep-seated hope within each of us that love, when given freely, will be matched with love in return, that our acts of kindness will be mirrored by others, that when we need support, those we once carried will stand by our side. But the truth, as many discover with time, is often far more complicated. Think about it. How often have you found yourself waiting for a call, a visit, a small gesture of appreciation that never comes? Maybe you see your children busy, building their own lives, caught up in work, family, and endless distractions. You remember birthdays they forgot, messages left unread, empty promises of "I'll visit soon" that fade into silence. Sometimes the very people you gave the most to are now the ones most absent in your life. It's not that they don't care. Life, in its relentless flow, sweeps everyone into their own stories. Each generation faces its own set of challenges, ambitions, and worries. What we once believed to be a mutual contract of love, give and receive, care and be cared for, can turn out to be little more than an unspoken hope. And when this happens, it's easy to feel a sting of disappointment, maybe even resentment. After all I've done, why am I standing here alone? It's a question that echoes quietly in the hearts of many who have spent years giving and holding things together. Buddhist philosophy invites us to look at this pain with compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. The Buddha taught that attachment to expectations is the root of suffering. When we cling to the belief that love and sacrifice will always be reciprocated, we create conditions for our own heartache. Life, like the seasons, is ever-changing. Relationships grow and fade, priorities shift, and the energy we invest in others is not always returned to us in kind. There's a story I often reflect on, a story of an elderly man who was once the pillar of his family. In his younger years, he worked tirelessly, made sacrifices big and small, and ensured his children had opportunities he never did. He believed that when he grew old, his family would naturally give back, surrounding him with the same care and devotion. But as time passed, his phone rang less frequently. Family dinners became rare. The home he once filled with laughter and warmth now echoed with quiet solitude. It's a story not just of one man, but of countless people who realize that love, for all its beauty, does not obey the rules of fairness that we quietly write in our minds. So what can we do with this realization? Do we close our hearts, give up on caring? Or do we, as Buddhist wisdom suggests, let go of our attachment to how things should be and love without expectation? Imagine love as water flowing in a river. If we try to dam it up, to hold it, to make it flow back our way, the water stagnates and becomes heavy. But when we let it flow freely, giving without strings, we create space for peace to enter, even if the current never brings anything back. I invite you to pause and ask yourself, where in your life are you holding on to expectations? What would it feel like to release them? Just a little. This is not a call to stop loving or giving. Instead, it's an invitation to love with wisdom, to understand that everything changes and that real peace comes not from what is given back, but from the freedom of giving without fear or regret. As we continue this journey together, let's reflect on what it means to offer our hearts, our time, and our presence simply because it is in our nature to do so, not because of what we might receive in return. Because in the end, the greatest gift you can give, to others and to yourself, is love that is free from expectation, anchored in compassion, and open to the beauty of impermanence. The exhaustion of chasing recognition and the freedom of letting go. Let's take a quiet moment together and reflect on something deeply human, the longing for recognition. So often, after years of giving, of pouring ourselves into our families, our work, and our communities, we find ourselves searching for a simple gesture in return. Maybe it's a heartfelt thank you, a phone call from a loved one, or just the feeling that all our efforts are truly seen and valued. But what happens when that recognition doesn't come? How many times have you felt exhausted, not just physically, but in your heart, because you kept reaching out for validation that never arrived? Perhaps you know what it's like to feel invisible, even to the people you've given the most to. This search for acknowledgement can quietly drain our spirit. The more we chase after it, the more we seem to run into walls of silence and indifference. Over time, disappointment can grow heavy, settling in our chest as fatigue or even resentment. We may start to ask, why am I always the one reaching out? Why does no one reach back? I want to share with you a story, one that may sound familiar. There was once a man, the steadfast pillar of his family. For decades, he worked long hours, sacrificing his own needs to provide comfort, stability, and love for those he cared about. Birthdays, holidays, late-night conversations, he was always there, always the anchor. But as the years passed, he found himself spending more and more time alone. His children grew busy with their own lives. Family gatherings became rare. Even simple phone calls became occasional and often rushed. At first, he held on to hope. Surely, when they have more time, they'll come back. They'll remember how much I did for them. But the world kept spinning, and life moved on. The recognition he hoped for never fully materialized. This is not a story of failure, but of a universal truth. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that the root of much of our suffering is attachment, especially attachment to expectations. When we cling tightly to the idea that love, effort, or sacrifice must be rewarded, we set ourselves up for pain. The tighter our grip, the deeper our disappointment when life doesn't answer in kind. Have you noticed this in your own life? Maybe you felt that ache, the slow, quiet pain of waiting for appreciation that never arrives. Maybe you've given so much for so long that your spirit feels depleted. But what if there's another way? Buddhism suggests that the path to freedom isn't found in grasping for recognition, but in releasing the need for it altogether. Imagine how it might feel to give without expectation, to love, to support, to simply be present, not because you hope for applause, but because it is your true nature. The act itself becomes its own reward. The heart finds rest not in what is returned, but in the peace of knowing you gave fully, freely, and with compassion. This doesn't mean closing yourself off or becoming indifferent. It's about transforming the way you relate to others and to yourself. It's the quiet confidence that arises when you realize your worth is not dependent on someone else's acknowledgement. So, the next time you feel that familiar ache, the longing for recognition, pause and breathe. Ask yourself, can I release this expectation? Can I find contentment in simply being, simply loving, simply giving? If you do, you may notice something beautiful. The exhaustion begins to fade. Resentment loosens its grip. In its place, there's a gentle spaciousness, a peace that comes from letting go. You may still hope for appreciation, but you are no longer bound by it. You can stand strong in your own presence, knowing you have lived with an open heart regardless of who is watching. This, too, is a kind of liberation. And in that freedom, you just might find the recognition you've been seeking within yourself. The cost of expectation and the wisdom of giving without conditions. Have you ever found yourself believing, deep down, that kindness will always come back to you? That if you give enough of your time, your love, your energy, then surely at some point the universe will repay you in kind? This idea is woven into so many of our stories. We hear it as children. Treat others the way you want to be treated. We see it in movies, in fairy tales, in the way our parents or teachers talk about life. It's comforting, isn't it? It makes the world seem fair, predictable, almost like a silent contract. If I do good, I will receive good. But as we journey through life, the truth is often far less simple. Sometimes you give your best to someone, a friend, a partner, a family member, and that effort seems to vanish into thin air. You remember their birthdays, you're there for their struggles, you celebrate their wins, but when your own moments of need arise, the room feels empty. The calls go unanswered, the gestures aren't returned. Why does this happen? Buddhist philosophy offers a gentle answer. It teaches us about anicca, impermanence. Nothing in this life, not even our closest relationships, is guaranteed to stay the same. People change, circumstances shift, even our own hearts evolve in ways we never could have predicted. Think for a moment about the nature of your relationships. Are there people you once felt inseparable from, who are now just distant memories? Have you ever tried to hold on to a connection, believing that if you just gave more, you could keep things as they were? We all do this, in big and small ways, trying to make love, friendship, or gratitude a permanent fixture in a world that is constantly moving. But here's where the cost comes in. When we give with the hidden expectation of return, we're not really giving. We're making a silent deal that the other person hasn't even agreed to. When the return never comes, the disappointment can turn to bitterness. The river of goodwill that once flowed freely starts to dry up. Resentment quietly builds. It's a heavy burden to carry, and one that often goes unspoken. So what can we do? How do we live in a world where even our deepest bonds can change or fade away? Buddhist wisdom encourages us to shift our mindset, to give for the sake of giving, to love for the sake of loving, to let go of the need for anything in return. Imagine how freeing it would feel to offer kindness not as a transaction, but as a natural expression of your heart. To care not to secure a favor for the future, but simply because it feels right in the present moment. This isn't always easy. It can feel vulnerable. But when you give without keeping score, you step outside the cycle of expectation and disappointment. You connect more honestly with others and with yourself. The truth is, everything in this life is subject to change. What remains steady is the intention behind our actions. When you choose to give freely, your generosity becomes a reflection of who you are, not of what you hope to get back. So, the next time you reach out a hand, offer a kind word, or give of yourself, try this gentle experiment. Ask yourself, am I giving from a place of wholeness? Can I let this be enough, regardless of the outcome? When you do, you may notice a quiet lightness entering your heart, a sense of peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. And in that moment, you discover the real gift, the freedom to love without fear and to let go without regret. The story of May, letting go of expectations, finding peace in unconditional giving. Let me invite you into the quiet, reflective space of a true story, a story that may feel familiar to your own heart. There was once a woman named May. All her life, she was the stronghold of her family. From a young age, she was the one everyone leaned on, the supportive sister, the loving wife, the nurturing mother. If there was a crisis, May was there. If someone needed help, May would drop everything. Her door was always open, her hands always busy with the tasks of care and love. She was the heartbeat of her home. For decades, this was May's rhythm. She tended to her siblings, her husband, her children. She built a warm, stable home where laughter often mingled with the aroma of home-cooked meals. Neighbors admired her devotion. Friends spoke of her selflessness. Her children would say, "We could never do this without Mom." But time, as it always does, kept moving forward. May's children grew up. They found careers, started their own families, moved to new cities. Her husband passed away, and the house that once echoed with noise and life became quiet. She would call her children, eager for a visit, for a conversation that lingered longer than a rushed, "I'll come soon, Mom." But soon turned into weeks, then months. She waited, at first patiently, then with a growing ache. She replayed memories, wondered if she had done something wrong, if her love had somehow failed to leave a mark. The invitations kept coming, birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners. But the seats stayed empty more often than not. Her phone would buzz with brief messages. "Sorry, Mom, work is crazy. I'll call you later, I promise." She'd sit by the window, watching the sun set, hoping for the sound of footsteps on the porch. Maybe you know someone like May. Maybe you are May. And maybe you too have felt that sharp pinch of loneliness after a lifetime of giving. One day, in a moment of gentle reflection, May realized something profound. Her pain was not simply from being alone. It was from the invisible contract she'd written in her heart. The belief that all the care she had given would surely come back to her. That love, when sown, would always be harvested in the same measure. This was the root of her sorrow. Attachment to the outcome, the unspoken expectation of reciprocity. Buddhist wisdom calls this clinging, holding on to how things should be rather than how they truly are. The more she clung to the hope of returned affection, the more she suffered when reality did not meet her dreams. But in her solitude, May also discovered something else, a quiet, surprising peace. She began to reflect on her life, not as a ledger of who gave and who received, but as a journey of wholehearted love. She remembered the warmth she brought to her family, the lives she helped shape, the kindness she offered without being asked. She saw her giving for what it was, an expression of her deepest self, not a bargain waiting for fulfillment. Slowly, May let go. She stopped counting the visits that didn't happen, the calls that never came. She found joy in small rituals, tending her garden, writing letters to friends, volunteering at the local library. She learned to savor the moments of connection when they came, and to release the longing when they didn't. May realized, true peace is not about what we receive, but about how fully we give, without holding back and without expecting a return. This is the wisdom of unconditional love. It doesn't mean we stop caring, or that disappointment never visits us again. It means our heart is lighter, because we are free from the burden of expectation. So, as you listen to May's story, I invite you to ask yourself, where in your life are you holding on to the hope of being repaid? What would it feel like to let that go, just for a moment? When we release our grip on how others should respond, we open our hearts to a new kind of freedom, a peace that is ours alone to cultivate. We discover that the act of giving in itself is enough. And in that quiet realization, like May, we can finally rest, knowing that we are complete even when no one is there to say thank you. Returning to yourself, honoring your energy in later life. Let's pause for a moment together and imagine this. You've spent so many years giving, pouring your heart, your energy, your precious time into those you love. You've built a life by nurturing others, solving problems, showing up for family, friends, and community. Maybe you rarely questioned it. Maybe, like many of us, you believed that's simply what a good person does. But now, as you stand at the threshold of a new chapter, maybe with silver in your hair, maybe with a quieter home, you might notice a shift inside. A gentle question begins to whisper. What if this season of life isn't about being needed or chasing after anyone's attention? What if it's about returning home to myself? There's a common belief, especially as we age, that our value lies in our usefulness to others. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to see things differently. The Buddha taught that true peace arises when we care for ourselves with the same compassion we've always extended outward. Think about it. How much energy have you spent trying to hold everything together? How often have you put your needs at the bottom of the list, delaying simple pleasures, hobbies, or even rest because there was always someone else to care for first? It's so easy to get caught in the habit of sacrifice. We tell ourselves, "I'll take that trip one day," or "I'll pick up painting again when life is less busy," or "My dreams can wait." But what if now, right now, is the moment to start listening to your own heart? Ask yourself, what brings me joy, not years ago, but today? What small delight have I set aside for so long that it now feels like a distant memory? Is there a book you long to read, a song you wish to learn, a sunrise you want to watch without rushing off somewhere else? Let me share a story. There was a man named John, a beloved father, grandfather, and friend, who had spent his life working as a teacher. For decades, he poured his energy into his students, staying late to help, showing up for every game, every school event. His family, too, relied on him for wisdom, stability, and comfort. But when John retired, he found himself alone in a quiet house, unsure how to fill the hours. For months, he tried to keep busy, volunteering, checking in on others, always trying to be useful. But he still felt a strange emptiness, a sense of having lost something vital. One day, a friend asked him a simple question. "John, what is something you've always wanted to do for yourself?" He paused. Then he smiled, remembering his childhood love for music. With encouragement, he signed up for beginner piano lessons. At first, he struggled. His fingers were stiff, his confidence low. But slowly, day by day, the music returned. Not perfectly, not as it was in youth, but with new meaning. He began to look forward to quiet mornings at the keys, playing just for himself, without an audience or a goal. In honoring his own joy, John's spirit began to feel lighter. He discovered that this stage of life was not about fading away, but about reclaiming the parts of himself that had long been set aside. So, I invite you to gently turn inward, just for a moment. What is your piano? What is waiting for your attention, your energy, your love? You do not need anyone's permission to prioritize yourself. Your needs matter. Your happiness matters. Let this be a time for you to ask, what is possible now? You may be surprised by what you find. New interests, new friendships, new peace. The journey back to yourself is not selfish. It is an act of deep wisdom, a way to honor the life you've lived and the life you still have to explore. After all, this is your time. This is your energy. This is your permission to live fully, just as you are, right now. The power of simple joys. Returning to yourself in everyday moments. Let's take a deep breath together and pause for a moment to notice the simple things. Have you ever noticed how life's smallest pleasures can offer the deepest peace? A quiet morning spent sipping tea as the world slowly wakes. The comfort of your favorite chair and a book that's waited patiently for your attention. A gentle walk under the shade of old trees, feeling the rhythm of your own footsteps, the breeze on your face. These moments aren't grand or dramatic. They don't ask for applause. But they have a special kind of magic. They help us return to ourselves. In our modern world, we're often told that happiness is found out there, in new achievements, new relationships, bigger goals. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to look closer. It reminds us that peace is already present, waiting quietly in the ordinary details of our day. To practice mindfulness, to really notice the warmth of the cup in your hand, the feeling of the sun on your skin, the softness of your own breath, is to offer yourself a homecoming. No matter what happened yesterday, no matter what tomorrow brings, these small joys are always here for you. Let me share with you the story of Mr. Han, a retired teacher whose life changed in an unexpected way. For more than 40 years, Mr. Han devoted himself to guiding and inspiring young minds. He spent long nights grading papers, countless hours helping students who needed a little extra care. He was respected, needed, even loved by many. But when the school bell rang for the last time and the classroom lights went dark, Mr. Han suddenly found himself in a very different world. A world that felt much quieter and a bit lonelier. At first, he tried to fill the silence with television, phone calls, or errands, but nothing seemed to fill the empty space in his heart. One day, while cleaning his attic, Mr. Han discovered an old violin, dusty but full of memories. As a child, he had loved music, but life's demands had pushed that passion aside. He hesitated, thinking, "Am I too old to start again?" But the violin seemed to call to him, so he decided to try. The first weeks were awkward. His fingers fumbled, his notes were shaky. He was a beginner all over again. But with gentle persistence, a little music began to return. Morning after morning, Mr. Han played, not for anyone else, but for the sheer joy of it. He found comfort in the simple act of making music, in being present with his own heart. The loneliness softened. The quiet began to feel like peace. Mr. Han's story is not just about learning an instrument. It's about returning to yourself through small acts of joy and care. It's about discovering or rediscovering what makes your own spirit feel alive. You don't need a grand plan. Sometimes all it takes is a cup of tea, a walk in the park, a mindful moment with your breath. So I invite you, right now, to look around your own life. What simple pleasures have you set aside? Is there a hobby you've missed, a book you've left unfinished, a quiet ritual that once brought you peace? Give yourself permission to return to these moments. You're not wasting time. You're nurturing your soul. This is self-care in its truest, most gentle form. Remember, joy does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers quietly in the background, waiting for you to slow down, listen, and receive. May you find, in the smallest things, a path back to yourself. The power of silence and speaking at the right moment. Let's take a gentle breath together and reflect on the nature of our words. Think back to when you were younger, maybe in your teens or 20s. Did you ever find yourself caught up in heated debates or passionate arguments, desperate to make your voice heard? Perhaps you wanted to prove your point, to be right, to stand out, or simply to avoid feeling overlooked. We've all been there, raising our voices, clinging to our opinions, believing that the louder we speak, the more likely we are to be understood. But as the years pass and life unfolds, something begins to shift inside us. Maybe it happens gradually, maybe it arrives all at once. One day, you realize that peace is rarely found in the noise. You start to notice that the most powerful words aren't always the loudest, and that sometimes the greatest wisdom is found not in speaking, but in the quiet space between words. Buddhist philosophy offers gentle guidance here. The Buddha taught, "Speak only what is true, necessary, and kind. If your words don't improve upon silence, let there be silence instead." What a simple yet radical idea. Imagine what our lives might look like if we practice this in every conversation. Have you ever been in a room full of people, each one vying for attention, voices overlapping and opinions clashing? It's easy to feel lost, even overwhelmed. But then, perhaps, there's someone in the corner, quiet, attentive, speaking little but listening deeply. When they do choose to speak, everyone leans in. Their words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they're thoughtful, timely, and sincere. I remember a story from my own life, a disagreement with a close friend when I was younger. We argued for hours, each of us convinced we were right, neither willing to back down. Looking back, I realize how much energy we wasted, how the argument built walls instead of bridges. If only I'd known then what I know now, that silence is not weakness and restraint can be an act of strength. The power of silence is not about shutting down or withdrawing from the world. It's about choosing your words with care, understanding that sometimes the best way to be heard is to listen first. It's the wisdom to know that not every opinion needs to be shared, not every conflict needs to be solved with words. Let's pause for a moment. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be truly silent in a conversation? Not out of fear or passivity, but out of respect for the moment. How did that change the dynamic? What might happen if you gave yourself and others more room to breathe? In today's world, we are surrounded by constant noise, social media debates, news, endless chatter. But the most profound moments of connection often arise in stillness, in eye contact, in a gentle nod, in quiet understanding. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, speech is powerful. It can heal, inspire, and unite. But it can also wound, divide, and exhaust. The true art is knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the talking. So, the next time you feel the urge to jump into a debate, to prove your point, or to fill an awkward silence, ask yourself, are my words true? Are they kind? Are they necessary? If not, maybe silence is the best answer. Let us honor the power of silence as much as we do the power of speech, because in the gentle quiet, wisdom often reveals itself. The wisdom of silence, a monk's lesson. Let me share with you a story, one that lingers quietly in my heart, and perhaps, after today, will linger in yours too. There was once an elderly monk, known for his deep wisdom and gentle presence. Over the years, he had seen the world change, watched generations come and go, and guided countless students with patience and compassion. One day, a young student, brimming with pride and eager to prove himself, approached the old monk. The student challenged the master with questions, sharp, pointed, even a little arrogant. He debated loudly, hoping to impress those around him, to show that his knowledge could rival even the monk's decades of experience. The monk listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend himself. He simply watched the student, nodding occasionally, letting the flurry of words wash over him like a passing rain. When the student finally paused, expecting a counterargument or a lesson in logic, the old monk simply smiled and said, "Thank you for sharing your thoughts." Then, without another word, he walked away, leaving the young man stunned in the quiet that followed. At first, the student was frustrated. He wanted a battle of wits, a chance to prove himself. But as the silence stretched on, he found himself replaying the exchange in his mind. What was the lesson here? Why hadn't the monk argued, corrected, or even explained? In time, the student realized, the greatest wisdom often lies not in proving a point, but in knowing when words are no longer needed. This is the power of silence. It's not weakness or surrender. It's the deep inner strength to recognize that not every argument deserves your energy, and not every challenge requires a response. Think about your own life. How many times have you found yourself drawn into an argument that went nowhere? How often have you wasted your breath on debates that left you feeling drained, misunderstood, or even resentful? Buddhist teachings remind us that energy is precious. When we spend it recklessly, defending our ego, reacting to every provocation, we often end up feeling empty, even if we win the argument. But when we practice mindful silence, we conserve our peace, our clarity, and our well-being. This doesn't mean we never speak up, especially when truth or justice is at stake. But it means we choose our moments with care. We ask ourselves, will my words bring more light or just more noise? Is this the time to speak, or is it wiser to simply let go? Sometimes the most loving response is no response at all. Sometimes silence is the space in which growth happens, where the other person can reflect and where we protect our own serenity. So, next time someone tries to draw you into a pointless argument, or when you feel that familiar urge to prove yourself, remember the monk's smile. Remember the gift of silence. You have nothing to prove. Your energy is sacred. Let your silence be your strength, and may it bring you and those around you a deeper, quieter peace. Observing instead of intervening, the art of letting go. Let's take a gentle pause together. Have you ever watched someone you care about walking straight toward a mistake and felt an overwhelming urge to step in, to fix things, to protect them from pain? It's only natural. Our desire to help, to shield others from suffering, comes from a place of love. Maybe you've seen your child struggling with a choice you know is risky, or a friend stuck in patterns that only lead to heartache. Your heart aches for them. Your mind fills with advice and warnings. It feels almost impossible to just stand by and watch. But here's a question worth considering. Does our well-meaning interference always bring the results we hope for? Or, sometimes, do we end up making things harder, both for ourselves and for those we love? Buddhist philosophy invites us to see this through a different lens. There is wisdom in knowing when to step back and let life be the teacher. Every person, no matter how much we care, has their own path to walk. Some lessons can only be learned through direct experience, through falling, failing, and picking oneself up again. Think about your own journey. How many of your greatest lessons came not from someone rescuing you, but from facing the consequences of your choices? Did the stumbles not make you stronger, wiser, more compassionate? I remember, years ago, watching my younger brother navigate the ups and downs of his first job. He was impulsive, eager to impress, and sometimes careless with deadlines. I wanted so badly to step in, call his boss, rewrite his emails, fix his mistakes. But deep down, I realized that if I took away his struggle, I'd also take away his chance to grow. So I chose to be present but not intrusive. I listened when he vented, I offered support when he asked, but I let him find his own way, even when it was difficult to watch. With time, I saw something beautiful unfold. He began to trust himself. His confidence grew, not because someone else paved the way, but because he learned to navigate obstacles on his own. This is the art of letting go, not of loving less, but of loving more wisely. It's the courage to allow others the dignity of their own experience. In Buddhism, this approach is seen as an act of compassion. It means trusting the journey of those we care about, believing in their capacity to learn, to heal, and to rise after they fall. Of course, this isn't always easy. We're taught that good parents, good friends, good partners should always fix, always rescue. But sometimes the greatest gift we can give is our trust, our quiet confidence in another's ability to find their way. So, next time you see someone you love facing a challenge, ask yourself, am I helping because they truly need it, or because I am uncomfortable with their struggle? What might happen if I simply stood by with an open heart, offering support, but letting them steer their own ship? When we let go, we free both ourselves and others. We create space for growth, for wisdom, for resilience to blossom in its own time. And in that gentle letting go, we discover a deeper kind of love, one that is spacious, wise, and enduring. The story of Anand, letting go with love and trust. Let me share a story that speaks to the quiet strength found in letting go. Anand was a devoted son who loved his father deeply. He grew up watching his father make choices that, to him, seemed misguided, habits that brought struggle and sorrow into their lives. Anand tried everything he could think of to help. He offered advice, pleaded for change, even enlisted the help of relatives. But no matter what he did, his father remained on his own path, repeating the same mistakes, seemingly deaf to Anand's worry. Have you ever felt this way? Watching someone you care about heading down a path you know leads to heartache. The urge to step in, to rescue, to fix things can be overwhelming. But sometimes, despite our best intentions, our efforts only drive us further apart or leave us exhausted and bitter. One day, Anand reached a breaking point. He realized that all his interventions, his words, his warnings, his desperate attempts to control, were not bringing peace to either of them. Instead, he found himself caught in a cycle of frustration and helplessness, missing out on his own life while waiting for someone else to change. So Anand made a radical, loving decision. He let go of trying to control his father's journey. He stopped arguing, stopped rescuing, and gently turned his focus inward. He began to build his own life, finding joy in his work, nurturing friendships, and caring for his well-being. He was still there for his father, but with acceptance rather than expectation, presence instead of pressure. At first, it was not easy. He wondered if letting go meant giving up, or that he didn't care enough. But over time, Anand noticed a subtle transformation. The tension in their relationship softened. He had more patience, more compassion, because he was no longer driven by fear or frustration, but by a quiet trust that his father's life was his to live. In Buddhist philosophy, this is the art of detachment. It is not indifference, nor is it turning your back on those you love. Instead, it is trusting in the unfolding of each person's path, believing that everyone has their own lessons to learn in their own time and way. There's a beautiful metaphor in Buddhism. Imagine holding a small bird in your hand. If you squeeze too tightly, you hurt it, even with the best intentions. But if you keep your palm open, the bird may choose to stay, or it may fly away. But either way, it is free, and so are you. Letting go in this way is an act of love, not abandonment. It is saying, I trust you to find your way, and I trust myself to live fully too. Perhaps you have someone in your life, a friend, a partner, a child, whose choices cause you worry. What might happen if you shifted from control to trust? If you supported them with open hands and an open heart? This is not always easy, and sometimes it can feel uncomfortable or even scary. But the reward is a greater sense of peace for both of you, a relationship built on freedom, respect, and deep compassion. So the next time you find yourself gripping tightly, trying to fix or change someone's life, remember Anand's story. Remember the image of the open hand, and allow yourself and those you love the dignity of their own journey. In letting go, we do not lose love, we set it free. And in that freedom, we may discover a deeper, more enduring connection than we ever thought possible. Letting go of the need for approval. The story of Lila. Let's pause together for a gentle reflection, one that may stir memories from your own journey. From the moment we're born, we're taught the importance of approval. As children, we learn to seek praise from our parents, smiles for good grades, applause for polite manners, hugs when we follow the rules. At school, we're measured by our teachers. In friendships, we try to fit in, to be liked, to belong. This search for validation becomes a pattern, a silent contract with the world around us. But what happens when this need for recognition shapes the entire course of our lives? Let me tell you the story of Lila. Lila was the model daughter, gentle, kind, always striving to make her parents proud. She carried these habits into adulthood, becoming the supportive wife, the tireless mother, the reliable friend. She said yes to every request, put others' needs above her own, and measured her worth by the smiles and gratitude she received. For decades, Lila lived as the center of her family's universe. She hosted every holiday, remembered every birthday, and stepped in whenever someone needed help. Her home was warm, her calendar full. But as the years passed and her children grew up, life shifted. The house became quieter, the requests for help less frequent. Lila found herself alone with her thoughts. No more roles to play, no more applause to chase. It was in this silence that a new, unsettling question began to rise. Who am I when no one is watching? Lila realized that for so long she had lived for the approval of others that she never truly knew her own heart. Have you ever felt this way? Do you sometimes wonder if your choices are really yours, or if they are echoes of someone else's expectations? Buddhist wisdom teaches that our craving for external validation is a source of deep suffering. When we hand over our self-worth to others, we become prisoners to their opinions, always chasing approval but never feeling truly free. It's a subtle but powerful trap. The fear of being rejected, of disappointing those we care about, can keep us from ever living authentically. So how do we break free? Lila's awakening began when she allowed herself to sit in stillness and listen to her own needs. She started asking questions she had long avoided. What brings me joy? What do I value when no one else is watching? What does my heart long for beyond anyone else's approval? It was not an easy journey. Old habits tugged at her, doubts crept in. But slowly she learned to make choices for herself. To say no when she needed rest. To say yes to her own dreams, even if others didn't always understand. This shift didn't make Lila selfish. It made her more genuine, more present, more at peace. She realized that true belonging comes not from pleasing others, but from embracing and loving herself, flaws and all. So I invite you to pause and reflect. Where in your life are you still seeking approval? What might happen if you began to value your own inner voice as much as the praise of others? Letting go of the need for recognition is not about shutting people out. It's about finally inviting yourself in. You are enough, just as you are. The freedom of self-acceptance, the story of Andan. Let's take a quiet breath together, a moment to consider where true peace really comes from. Many of us spend much of our lives searching for something outside ourselves: approval from our parents, respect from colleagues, acceptance from friends. It's as if happiness is a treasure that someone else holds the key to, and we keep chasing after it, hoping for the right word, the perfect gesture, the next achievement to make us feel complete. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us, no one else can give us lasting peace. The calm we're searching for, the deep, steady contentment that can weather any storm, has to come from within. Let me share with you the story of Andan. Andan was, by all appearances, a success. He built a remarkable career, earned accolades, traveled in important circles. Every milestone became a new opportunity to prove himself, first to his family, then to his industry, and always, in some subtle way, to himself. But no matter how much he accomplished, the satisfaction was fleeting. There was always another goal to chase, another person to impress, another standard to reach. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're running on a treadmill, always moving, never arriving? For Andan, this realization became clear as the applause began to fade and the endless striving left him exhausted. One day, he made a radical decision: to leave behind the noise of prestige and the pursuit of recognition, and to live simply, quietly, in a small village far from the expectations he had carried for so long. At first, it was unsettling. There were no crowds, no awards, no one keeping score. He had to sit with himself, his fears, his insecurities, his longing to be seen. But in that solitude, something unexpected began to blossom. For the first time, Andan asked himself not what others wanted, but what truly mattered to him. He started gardening, took long walks, learned to cook, and found joy in little things. He discovered the beauty of presence, the comfort of his own company, and the peace that comes when you no longer have to prove your worth to anyone. Through this journey, Andan realized a simple, profound truth. Only self-acceptance brings real and lasting peace. The world's approval is always changing, sometimes present, sometimes gone. But when we accept ourselves, when we treat our own hearts with kindness, forgiveness, and understanding, we build a refuge that no one can take away. Buddhist teachings call this returning home to yourself. It means letting go of the endless quest for external validation and instead turning inward with compassion. It means celebrating your strengths, accepting your flaws, and realizing that your value was never measured by others to begin with. So I invite you to consider, where are you still waiting for someone else to tell you that you're enough? What would change in your life if you stopped chasing recognition and started cultivating acceptance from within? Andan's story isn't just his, it's an invitation for all of us to step off the treadmill, to breathe in the present moment, to find freedom not in applause, but in the gentle acceptance of your own imperfect, beautiful self. Because in the end, true peace doesn't come from outside. It is the quiet, steady light that grows when you finally come home to who you really are. Choosing yourself, the right to inner peace. Let's take one more mindful breath together as we come to the heart of today's journey. We live in a world that often tells us to put others first, sometimes to the point where we forget ourselves. We're taught that self-care is selfish, that our own needs should always come last. But Buddhist wisdom and the truth of lived experience teach something far more compassionate. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Imagine for a moment that you are a wellspring of kindness and energy. If you never refill that well, if you keep giving without replenishing, eventually there's nothing left to share. Self-care isn't indulgence, it's a sacred responsibility. So let me ask you, when was the last time you really checked in with yourself? Not just how are you in passing, but truly listened, deeply, honestly, without judgment. Have you been giving yourself enough care, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? Or have you been running on empty, hoping no one will notice? Remember, you have the right to choose peace for yourself. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't have to explain your boundaries or your choices. Your happiness is not something to be granted by others. It's something you claim, something you nurture every single day. This is not about turning your back on the world. It's about turning towards yourself with the same love and attention you've always given to others. It's about letting go of the need to justify your well-being or to prove your worth. It's about saying, I matter too. If you've spent years, maybe even decades, putting everyone else first, know that it is never too late to return to yourself. Give yourself permission to enjoy simple pleasures, a quiet walk, a nourishing meal, a few moments of mindful breathing, a night of good sleep. Let go. Allow yourself the freedom to feel joy, to embrace your own calm, and to live your life fully, just as you are. Happiness is not a reward to be earned. It is your birthright. So as you move forward from today, carry this truth gently in your heart. You have the power and the right to choose yourself, to nurture your own peace, and to live a life that feels whole and meaningful from the inside out. The world is brighter when you honor your own light. If this message resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel and join us on the journey to discover true peace and meaningful living. Let's share wisdom together, build inner strength, and create a life of calm and purpose every single day.